it took me 3 tries to get a commission. The first couple times I didn't get selected, and then on the 3rd try I was able to get selected for officer candidate school. So once that happened, and my career almost got derailed because I had a run-in with a Master Chief Petty Officer who was an E9, who we went head-to-head over some legal requirements. He was allowing people to smoke in his classrooms, and the Secretary of Defense said that that was not to happen. So rather than put the smoking lamp out, he said that, well, they can smoke whenever you're not teaching. So of course that led to some conflict between me and the rest of the students, because most of them were senior to me and had no problems in telling me what they thought about me. So he almost derailed my career. Luckily I was able to catch what was happening. I talked about that in detail in the book. And once I finished that tour, I went to an aviation squadron where they treated me like gold. I mean, they didn't see any color, they recognized my potential, and I got a wonderful recommendation for a commission by the squadron commander, who was a full bird captain, former aircraft carrier commander, and I was on my way. And then once I finished officer candidate school, I wound up, in the meantime, I put myself through college. I got my associate's degree and my bachelor's degree and applied for OCS just like anybody else coming out of college. So a lot of people I was in school with, the Navy had paid for their education through the enlisted commissioning program or something like that, enlisted scientific education program. But I put myself through college in my spare time. And so I was kind of I think I was the only person in my LCS class that got in the way that I did. And once I reported in my first ship, I was ready to go. I was the happiest ensign you'd ever seen.
I bet you were. I remember that transition well, going from enlisted to becoming a commissioned officer. Boy, you're talking about an honorable day and a day to be happy. So I'm sure, man, you were proud of yourself on that day. But Keith, I want to go back to something that you said, because I talk about in my book, Beyond Demographics, The Truth About Diversity, I talk about how, in my belief, color and race and all of those things have very little to do with diversity. But they're parts of it, but they are not the main catalyst, if you will, for diversity necessarily. Now, the reason why I want to go back to this is because you said when you went to the aviation squadron that there was a captain who saw your potential. What demographic group was this captain from? Was he white? Was he Hispanic? Was he Asian? Was he black? What was his?
He was a white captain. In my 22-year career, I never worked for a minority officer, except I worked for a white female officer for a short time. But other than that, every officer I ever served under was a white guy.
Okay. So the reason why I ask you this is because this is very important when we're talking about culture and we're talking about race relations, especially right now in these times that we're going through with all of this political turmoil and drama that's going on. Every time you turn the news on, it's, Republican this, Democrat this, and this, that, and going back and forth. Here it is, you had someone from a group that most would think would be opposed to you and your color. But for whatever reason, he saw your talent and said, hey, you know what? Young man, I'm going to tap you on the shoulder. It's your time. It's your time to shine. And he was able to do that. In your mind, what made him different from some of the other, white males or whoever it was that you worked for? What made him different from them and how they treated you?
I'm not exactly sure. It didn't hurt that I was his admin leading petty officer, so anything that he had written that he was writing to his superiors or his junior captains, I would be the one that typed that up. And I started making corrections or suggesting corrections to his work or suggesting the way to phrase this differently. And after a while, I went in there to make a suggestion, and he said, I'll never forget this, he said, Petty Officer Green, you know what I'm trying to say. Stop bothering me and just fix it. You know what I'm trying to say. So that was like a vote of confidence. And his admin officer pulled me aside on a couple of occasions and said, you've got a lot of potential. I consider you almost an equal, and you really need to consider getting a commission. So he saw that I could intelligently analyze what he was trying to say and fix it. So he saw a level of intelligence in me that he thought might be useful in the officer community. He didn't care what color I was. None of them did, for the most part.
Okay. Now, and that's unique because most of the time when you hear about aviation, the aviation side of the military, that's not necessarily the case. You know, I have friends that are also in the Navy, friends that are in the Marines, Air Force, you name it, and anytime they've had to either go and try to get into one of those squadrons or become a pilot, boy, they just had nightmares. If you didn't happen to be a white male, and not just any white male either, you had to have the right pedigree, you received some pushback. So that's a unique story in and of itself, that you didn't receive that sort of treatment, and that's why we do this show here. Because I don't want people to keep getting caught up in these stereotypes and all of this stuff that you see on the news, where now people have to take sides and get entrenched and just go for their team regardless of what the downfall may be. So that's why I wanted to bring that out and have you talk about that, because had he not been that way, you and I may not be talking tonight, because our past wouldn't have put us on that trajectory to get here.
That's correct.
So that's why I wanted to bring that out tonight. But let's go back to something else that you talked about. So I know you were also an equal opportunity specialist. So for those of you who don't know in the audience, that means that he handled complaints and stuff like that of discrimination, sexual harassment, and all of that kind of stuff. You mentioned earlier, Keith, that you saw that there was a difference between how you saw the African Americans or maybe minorities being treated as opposed to white males. Explain what you saw. You don't have to give names, of course, but explain what you saw and what the difference in the treatment was and how that affected those organizations.
Well, I primarily saw that when I was in Cuba, when I was the mass yeoman. When I volunteered for the Equal Opportunity Program, I was only an E5 and I was too junior for that job. So I got a waiver and they sent me anyway. Unfortunately, they sent me to a maintenance organization in Jacksonville, Florida. And when I say maintenance organization, I'm talking about pickup trucks and Confederate flag stickers and good old boys. You know, that's pretty much where I went. And when I checked into that command, the captain, a crusty old Navy engineering type captain, called me into his office and said, "We didn't have any race problems before you got here, and we're not going to have any now that you're here." And I said, "Yes, sir," and went about my business. There wasn't much for me to do in that arena because my job was to evaluate the programs of all the different ships in the squadron and advise them on their programs. And they really didn't want to hear much of what I had to say. So rather than do that, they assigned me to help the Master Chief Career Counselor teach his administrative type classes and his career counselor type classes. That's what led to the conflict between he and I about the smoking. And I was literally being set up to fail. He was advising the students after he lost the battle about the smoking in the classroom, telling them to, I was the reason that they couldn't smoke in the classroom anymore, and to remember that when they did their course critiques. So I was getting these horrible critiques and couldn't understand why, because what I was teaching, I knew more about it than anyone on the staff. As a matter of fact, I got promoted early to E6. I was an early candidate because I was so knowledgeable about what I was doing. I got basically deep selected for promotion to E6. It wasn't until I heard him through the wall telling these people to trash me in the critiques that I figured out what was going on. So I used some street smarts and dealt with him unofficially rather than file a complaint, because I realized I was in a hostile environment and filing a complaint might not be in my best interest. So I just met him face to face, man to man, and dealt with it that way. After that, we didn't have any more problems. And shortly after that, I got a supervisor that had just graduated from the same school I did, the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, and my life changed dramatically. I believe that guy saved my career. I really do.
Okay. Now, that's very important. I want to go back to something that you said, because this is important, and I always try to tell people this whenever I was an EEO compliance officer
That's correct. Had I filed that complaint under those circumstances, I most likely never would have gotten a commission.
Wow. Now, when you said earlier also when you got there that leadership told you we didn't have a discrimination problem before you got here, we're not going to have one while you're here, what do you think that meant?
Well, it meant that they did not want to hear anything about discrimination. Now, I knew that there was
not that
discrimination.
it wasn't actually happening, they just didn't want to hear it.
Oh, it was happening. I had people coming to me, telling me what was happening, various ships and whatnot, and I talked to ships on the, sailors on the ships, and, just on the base, just talk. There was discrimination taking place. There was one young man I distinctly remember. He had been the sailor of the year in his previous command, reported into a new command, and he couldn't do anything right. And it's the same guy, except his leadership had changed. The perception of his leadership had changed. I would live a version of that a few years later in my last tour, where I'd walk in as a golden boy and wind up fighting for my life, which was quite difficult because I was a lieutenant commander by then, and these things were not supposed to be happening. But I watched it happen, and I also lived it.
You remind me of, in our discussion, when we talked about your experiences in your career. I know you got a chance to either connect with or listen to the show that I had, my very first show, my first season, with Christy Rutherford on there.
Yes, I did.
Who was in the Coast Guard.
Right.
And very similar experience. I'm not sure if you got a chance to connect with her in person, but absolutely superstar. You name it, just a wealth of knowledge, so professional, and had to leave that organization because of the same thing. So I look back and I say, man, what did the organization lose, okay, by allowing talent like that? And like yourself, because if you went from being enlisted to commission, that takes talent. Somebody saw it. What does that organization lose when you treat people that way and they walk out of the door? Were you the only one that you saw these things happen to that they just said, you know what, I'm fed up, so I'm leaving?
I can't recall specifically anyone else that dealt with that, but I do know I talked to lots of black officers in my career. I can give you a couple of examples. There's one young man that I knew when I was in my department head tour. I went to Navy department head school as a lieutenant junior grade. Normally you're a lieutenant, but I managed to eke out some qualifications that put me ahead of the pack. And while I was there, I met a man who was being basically forced off active duty. They pretty much ate him alive. He just could not seem to get on his CO's good side, so he went into the reserves. Well, that young man wound up being a Rear Admiral superstar in the reserves. He is in the book Inspiring Innovation about the first 50 flag officers. He just, he just could not handle the pressure and the treatment he was receiving. There's several flag officers that were run off active duty and went on to become superstars in the reserve Navy, but in the surface Navy, it was kind of an eat your young type situation. And if you were black, you couldn't just be good, you had to be extra good. And oftentimes that's the same way it is today.